just wait whilst our lovely AV tech sets up our laptop. And I should say it wasn't a deliberate sartorial decision to colour coordinate, but I'm glad we're on message and on brand.
Yeah, it's good.
Awesome, thanks very much. So, we're not actually here to talk about fashion, although I'm sure Lana and I could do an excellent job. We're here to talk about data, and more specifically, data's relationship to content. Because successful content needs good data, and I'm sure for you all I'm preaching to the converted, because that's the premise we should all be working towards to make great user-focused content. But simply having the data on its own, it just isn't enough. And I think Paul referenced a really great quote earlier from Kit, which I'm going to paraphrase, but essentially he said that you need to present your data in a compelling way to your designers, your developers, any of your other stakeholders. And user insight needs to be persuasive to bring your stakeholders on a journey with you, to create the product that has the users at the heart of it.
Exactly, and Google Analytics is not enough. Google Analytics is my bread and butter. I love it. It gives so much insight about how people are interacting with your website. But it often doesn't give you that information about the intention behind people's visits, how they felt about using your website, and also the context they're visiting it in. So you really need a wide range of user insight, like, sure I'm preaching to the converted, but lab-based research, on-site surveys, call center data, email inquiries, anything you can get your hands on, basically, in order to be persuasive and, to tell the story in a way that will get buy-in for your digital work.
So today we'll be using Tapapa's redevelopment of their website as a case study. And the website went live maybe earlier on in this year. And it was a really good opportunity for Tapapa to take a data-driven approach to their website and really take a good hard look at what our audience wanted from our digital product. So Tapapa has 4,500 pages of content on their old website, which frankly is just a ridiculous amount for an organization that size. So we knew we didn't want to transfer the content verbatim from our old CMS to our new CMS. That would have been doing our content and our users a real disservice. So we took a content-first approach because everything else is just window dressing. And I said this to a conference full of content strategists last week, and they were really happy to hear that. I'm not sure how you feel about it. We can talk about it later. But it doesn't matter how good your design is, it doesn't matter how beautiful it is, it doesn't matter how well your website functions. If your content isn't good, people either they won't find the website or they won't come back to it. So in addition to taking a content-first approach and the sheer amount of content we had, to compound that we were working in Agile for the first time. And this was a really novel approach to digital products at Tapapa. And it was really important to us that our stakeholders were on board with the journey we were going to take. So in order to convince them that our approach was the right one and that the content we were creating was going to be good for their audience, we decided to use a variety of communication channels. And this included things like an internal blog, regular meetings, staff intranet, and just being available at all times to answer their questions. And in this way, we'd be able to bring the stakeholders on a journey with us, introduce them to the concept of a data-driven approach, and convince them that we were doing the right thing by their audience. And by communicating effectively and often, you can bring your stakeholders on a journey from data-averse to data-aware.
So exactly, and said before, Google Analytics is not enough. User insight is not enough. Every organization has different goals and values. If you're on a commerce site, that's probably to increase sales. But Tapapa is a cultural institution, and they have values that go beyond hard visit numbers. So things like fostering a national identity, inclusion, increasing reach and engagement. So it's a bit more intangible than your usual transactional-based data.
So right at the beginning of the project, we decided to do a discovery phase, which lasted about 2 to 3 weeks. And we were going to use many of the types of user research tools that Lana mentioned. So this includes things like website surveys, content audit, inquiry center data, visitor market research center data, because at Tapapa we're fortunate to have a visitor market research team. And by bringing all these disparate strands of data together, you can take your stakeholders on the journey and build up a really good, detailed picture of what your audience wants. So one of the early things we did was surveys of both our museum visitors and also our website visitors. So what did that data tell us? Well, our users love to papa, we think. Maybe they love surveys, because we certainly got a lot of people filling them in. Over 1,000 people took part in our user research, and we're really, really grateful to them. So what did that early research tell us? Have any of you actually been to Tapapa? Hands up. Oh, wow, amazing. Have any of you visited any of Tapapa's websites? Oh, maybe slightly more than our museum visitors, actually, because we found that 70% of museum visitors had never visited any Tapapa website. And I don't know about you, but I've found that quite surprising, because when I go to a museum, I want to know what's on, I want to know how to get there, I want to know if it's suitable for children, all of those kind of things. But that just didn't seem to be the case with Tapapa's visitors. So there was the first indication that user research could have implications beyond just the project you're working on at the moment. For us, it's a good indication that we could maybe engage these visitors in post-visit content at a later date, and that's something the team will be working on in future. Having said that, around half of the people who visit the website are planning to visit the museum. We found this out through a one-question survey, which was really helpful for us. But that still leaves about half the people visiting our website who don't want to visit the museum. So what did they want? We used Google Analytics to dig a little bit deeper into this, and I've picked out some of the hot topics that Google Analytics suggests are particularly popular for our audience. So, anybody recognize this? Yep, this is our colossal squid, and if you've been to Tapapa, you've probably seen her hanging out in her tank. And it is unbelievably popular online. So 4% of site searches contained the word squid, which suggests that A, it's a really popular topic, but B, we could be doing a bit more to help them find this content without having to search. And we also have a separate squid website, which contains the fascinatingly and somewhat bemusingly popular Build a Squid game. And that gets over 1 million hits a year globally from, I think most traffic comes from America. So it's clearly very popular. And apologies to the arachnophobes in the audience, but this is another really popular topic. We have a What Spider Is That page, which was written by one of our spider experts, and almost continually throughout the time since it's been online, it's been in the top 5 most popular pages. And we see spikes in traffic when there are any spiders in New Zealand news. So for example, somebody got bitten by a Nelson cave spider for the first time ever last year, and we saw a huge spike in traffic to our pages. And then one final popular topic is Matariki, the Maori New Year, which is celebrated annually in May, June. And Tapapa produces events related to this, but we also produce educational resources. And these educational resources get about 5% of total site traffic every year, and that's 120,000 page views. So there's clearly some popular topics that were giving us food for thought about what else our website visitors might want from us, in addition to the kind of generic visiting the website info. So that suggests to us that the best way to utilize Google Analytics is in conjunction with other tools to build a really detailed picture of user intentions and find out what they actually want from your website. So once we had the initial user research, which took about 2 to 3 weeks, we used it to develop some personas, which were representative of about 6 main groups of our audiences. And we used it to develop content for specific someones rather than that horrible generic everybody. And we won't go into too much detail on these, as I know Kat's going to speak on them tomorrow. But here are our 6 main personas. And these were really well received by our stakeholders. And in part, that's because we were able to tell them and explain the kind of data we had, and take them on a journey with us. Because of the comprehensive data set we had, we were able to convince them that we really did understand what their audience wanted. So once we had these 6 personas in place, we handed them over to Lana for a little bit more of an in-depth look at it from an analytics perspective.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, so it's really hard to approach Google Analytics fresh, just opening the bonnet. It's there's hundreds of reports and it's quite hard to get useful insights. So it's really useful to have assumptions about your audience or design decisions that you want to test. Are people clicking here? Are people going here? And so the personas were really good for this. We were able to make assumptions about behavior based on the personas.
Sorry, my tiny child-sized ears are causing the mic to slip off, so if I'm a bit flaky on that, you go for it.
So Ruth was talking before about the museum visitor audience that makes up about half of Te Papa's traffic. And we found out that the tourist persona closely matched this big audience segment. So they want the basic information about how to visit the museum, things like opening hours, car parking information, and they want it quickly. They don't want to explore other areas. We'd love them to, but they just want that information so they can get out of the website, get to the museum. So what I did was created a segment in Google Analytics, which tracked people who visited the What's On section and the Visiting Te Papa section. And these two sections have the information, the practical information, as well as events and exhibitions. So by creating a segment, we were able to see how they interacted with the whole site, what keywords they searched for in Google before they got to the site, the most popular pages they visited on the site, and not just those two sections, and what they searched for on the site, if they came by mobile, things like that.
So Lana's work was really useful for us. We were able to see what kind of content people wanted, and then we could move on to tone of voice research. We could take a look into how people wanted that content to sound. And there's quite a lot of different ways you can do tone of voice research. I won't go into them all now, but I'm really happy to talk about it afterwards. The way we chose to do it was to ask people, our museum visitors and our online visitors, how they felt about Te Papa at the moment, and how they wanted to feel about Te Papa in future. And broadly, these visitors agreed with us. They agreed with each other, sorry. They wanted Te Papa to sound engaging, educational, friendly, all very good, very positive words that all chimed with how we wanted to come across. But we wanted to test if that was actually how people wanted us to sound in practice, if they saw the content written down. So we got one of our in-house writers to write some examples of content which kind of run the gamut of friendly to approachable, simplistic to knowledgeable, corporate to chatty, that kind of thing. So we asked them some quite challenging questions in some ways. It was, you want to find out more about Te Papa's collection of birds. Which description do you prefer? And they had 3 options to choose from. And again, this user research gave us a really lot of useful insights that would be useful for other digital products at Te Papa as well. But one of the particular insights that was most useful to us for this project was about Te Reo Māori. So all of our users, many of whom are New Zealanders, want Te Papa to include Te Reo Māori words within the English text, with a glossary or an explanation, where appropriate. So that was positive for us. We knew that our user research suggested we should be using some Te Reo Māori, but we wanted to go a little bit further than that. Now, I don't know how much you know about Te Papa, but it is government mandated to preserve and reflect New Zealand's bicultural heritage. And a really important part of that is Te Reo Māori, or the Māori language. As you can probably tell from my accent, I am most definitely not a Kiwi. My knowledge of Te Reo Māori before I arrived in New Zealand was extremely limited, and I suspect the only word I knew was the haka. So we had to rely very heavily on our incredibly knowledgeable and informed colleagues. And they included our Kaihotu, who's our Māori co-leader, our iwi relationships team, and our Te Reo Māori writer. So in conjunction with them and our content strategy experts, we consolidated our aims around Te Reo Māori to 2. To improve the website for our fluent Te Reo Māori speakers, and to also educate and increase users' knowledge and understanding of the language. But we had some things we had to consider, and we only have one Te Reo Māori writer in-house, and that person is responsible for all the on-floor content as well as all the digital content. So that's a lot of work for them, so we were quite resource limited. Only 4% of New Zealand's population speak fluent Te Reo Māori. And we want to make the experience really great for them, but we can't compromise the experience for our other users. And obviously we get quite a lot of international users, so English may be their second language. And we had no time or budget for user research. So that meant we'd be reliant on post-go-live data to see if the content was working, and that's not how we would normally want to do it. So in conjunction with our knowledgeable stakeholders, we made a few decisions, and that was to remove all outdated content from the website. And now that's a total no-brainer, because it's worse to have wrong content than no content at all. Based on our tone and voice research, we would use specified Te Reo Māori words throughout the website, glossed appropriately, and to translate all titles and headings. And we would also translate key pages, the ones that our stakeholders told us would be most useful to a fluent Te Reo Māori audience. So did it work? Like I said, we'd be reliant on post-go-live data to find out. This is an example of one of the Te Reo Māori pages in situ on the live site. You can see, let's see if the pointer works. Hooray. You can see there that the IA and the titles are in English and Te Reo Māori, and that's true across the entire website, no matter what page you're on. But this is an example where you can choose either the English or the Te Reo Māori content. It's a guide of how to take care of textiles and kākahu, so it's particularly useful to Te Reo Māori-speaking audience. And did it work? Well, on our fully bilingual pages, the answer is sadly not. Only just over 1% of people view either the English or the Te Reo Māori article, and that is a real problem for us, because that suggests that 99% of people don't view any content. We're going to have to do a little bit more research to find out why that might be. I mean, maybe the interaction cost is too high, they don't want to click on an extra link. Maybe the design isn't quite right, or maybe the content's not what they're looking for. The team are going to look into that to find out a little bit more. But there are some positives in our bilingual content, one of which is that IA works much better on the current site than the previous site. So clearly having an IA in 2 languages isn't a problem. Also, anecdotally, the use of Te Reo Māori has been really well received. So we're pleased we're going to continue using it. And people are searching for Te Reo Māori search terms. So people clearly want the content. We just need to find out the best way of how to present it to them. So we'll continue to use Te Reo Māori. That's an example of how Google Analytics data can sometimes conflict with your organisation's values. But the team are going to look into ways, the best way to present bilingual and potentially even in the future multilingual content to our users, and to make sure it's useful and relevant to them.
So now I'm going to talk about how we use Google Analytics in conjunction with that museum visitor audience persona that we both talked about before. So a couple of examples about how Google Analytics gave us good insights, and then about how data kind of took us to show how we were meeting Te Papa's cultural values, those more intangible values and goals. So the first insight is that, and this is post-go live, so people want the most popular exhibitions on the homepage. So we had Gallipoli on the homepage hero image. This is post-launch. You can see it here, and you could click that and go through to the actual content on the site. And when we swap this with a DreamWorks spot, there's the DreamWorks one, clicks to the Gallipoli page dropped by 40%. So you think, oh yeah, that's probably right. You know, take it off the homepage. People aren't going to click on it. But it shows that people were clicking on it. So, and this is the kind of insightful bit, is that searches for Gallipoli actually went up 117%. So it wasn't like people arrived in the homepage, saw a cute link, clicked on it. They'd search for Te Papa in Google, they'd arrive on the homepage, but they'd have that Gallipoli exhibition in mind. That was their intention. Here's the graph showing the 117% increase in searches for Gallipoli. By the way, talking about being persuasive, I find these really useful in terms of communication. Just getting the point across, data, a big graph is great, showing an increase, decrease, whatever you want. That was the Gallipoli example. And people want the most popular exhibitions on the homepage, and they'll search for them if they're not there. So at the moment, we're designing a solution for the next time there are multiple major exhibitions. And please don't show the Te Papa designers this, or designers look away. This is my gorgeous mock-up of what it could look like. So I'm sure you won't be seeing that in the future. The next insight is that pre-redesign, a lot of people were searching for opening hours across the whole site on loads of different pages. So what the designers did was to put opening hours on every page, and you can see that here. So yeah, you can see in the top right-hand corner of the top nav, just a tiny little opening hours thing. If we zoom in on that, it's actually quite clever because the designers have put it right above the search box, so people think, where are the opening hours? And they go to search, and they see this. And it worked. There's been an 85% drop in searches containing hour, and that's this May compared with last year. And there we go, there's another beautiful graph. So that's 85% drop in searches containing hour. Ruth talked before about matariki, and this was we did a bit of a project on this year. Basically every year Te Papa hosts performances and events. It's actually been a big part in the revival of the Matariki Festival of the Māori New Year. And this year they really wanted to increase reach and engagement and just get out to people a bit more. So we did a lot of work on that. You can read about it on the Te Papa blog. We actually got an increase in 47% traffic to Matariki pages, which was pretty cool. But there was one particular example which actually kind of defeated our ideas about our museum visitor persona. It was quite interesting, is the Kaumātua Kapahaka. So this was a 2-day event, and it was performances in the museum, and it really challenged the idea about the museum visitor persona. So you can see here the graph showing there was a huge peak. Oh, sorry, I just need to go back a bit. Thank you. So basically, traffic peaked over 25th and 26th of June. There were 2 pages on Kaumātua Kapahaka events, and there was 4,000 visits. And there was far above average visits from mobile and Facebook. So we kind of looked at it and we thought, well, they want to visit the events, right? They're on mobile, they're probably like on the day of the event looking for location, looking for parking information. This is a clear example of our museum visitors. And here's the report showing it was a really big spike in traffic across those 2 days. But when we look closer at the data, it indicated they were watching the live stream. We had a live stream of the performances on our website. So we found that 80% of people who visited the website were from outside Wellington. 20 people searched on site for live streaming. That's a small amount, but probably indicative of a larger audience. Most people won't bother trying to search on your site. They'll just go straight back to Google and try again. And the Facebook thing was interesting, the Facebook referrals, because we looked into it and we found out that most of the interaction was happening on Facebook. There was also live streaming on Facebook, which got 21,000 views with no paid promotion. So it was a big success. And here's the Facebook post, and it had a link in the post to the website, to our pages that we're getting that trickle-down traffic. So it was really cool because the team had taken visitors beyond the physical museum and as kind of virtual visitors to it had allowed a lot of people who couldn't otherwise attend the event, basically. So taking people beyond the museum walls. And that wasn't thanks to me, it was thanks to the social media team, especially Amanda Rogers. So it was really nice work. But it's a great example showing how those, increasing reach and engagement, inclusion, those more intangible goals of an organisation, that hard data can still show that we're meeting those. And through qualitative and quantitative insight, the kind of interaction of the two, we're getting a more nuanced view of our audience that's constantly evolving, and it is a journey. So, to be really persuasive, it's not just about the data, it's Te Papa's goals and values, and that's a bit harder to find out than just number of transactions, but it's also often a lot more rewarding. So data is the voice of our audience. And I'll just hand it back to Ruth.
So ultimately, was it persuasive? Well, yes, it was. Most of our stakeholders are on board with this project now, and that's because we managed to convince them through the sheer amount of data we gathered and the story we were able to tell them. We made that data compelling. We created a narrative around what our users want, what their intentions are, and what their sentiments are towards TPAPA. And we give you this case study not to say that the work TPAPA did in this was excellent, and it is, I think, but more that if we can do it, anyone can do it. TPAPA is a large and complex organization with a lot of different stakeholders, a huge amount of content, and in a new agile format for the first time. So if we can do it, you can do it too. And our stakeholders really brought into the value of this project. And one example of this is we have quite a few of external sites as well. And many of our stakeholders are in the process of moving these external sites onto the core site because they have confidence in the process, that we understand their users, that we know what their audience wants and needs. So this is what Lana and I consider to be the magic formula for making better content and bringing your stakeholders on board, is having excellent data. It's really understanding what your organizational needs and values are, and it's being able to communicate effectively to your stakeholders. And that makes better content for everyone. But I'd also like to acknowledge that good content is a team effort. So we had Lana, who's our analytics expert, which was excellent. We also had 60 Proof as content strategy experts who were really great. And we had a really amazing in-house team. So I'd like to give a heartfelt thanks to them for their excellent work, because for their dedication to data, we were able to take our stakeholders on the journey to a website with users at the heart of it. And I'd also like to say thanks to them and thanks to you all for listening too. So thank you.